Hello friends, Malay Panpadith here, CEO of the SOAR Community Network and co-founder of the SOAR Community Nebula. We are bringing to you champions of change and community builders from around the world, and today I'm delighted to present to you L.Y. Marlow. Thank you so much, L.Y., for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So I'd love to start by having you reintroduce yourself to our audience and share more about the work that you're doing in the world, and tell us about this beautiful, beautiful initiative, movement, and project, this baby of yours called Saving Promise.
Oh, I'd be delighted to. You know, I'm a storyteller, so I like to start with a story. I founded an organization that is called Saving Promise, and is inspired by 5 generations of mothers and daughters in my family that suffered and survived over 60 plus years of domestic violence. My grandmother, my mother, myself, my daughter. But it will be the story of my daughter's little girl named Promise that became the 5th generation when she lay on the bed next to my daughter as my daughter was strangled and almost killed for the 2nd time by Promise's father. And that story would come on the cusp of my having just finished writing my first book about the 4 generations called Color Me Butterfly, and Promise was born that same year in 2007. And I remember getting the call that this has happened and going to a level of urgency to get my daughter and Promise to safety. And the title of the organization and my vision for the organization actually came, I would never forget, it was August 25th, Malay, 2007, when I would write a letter to the only person in the world that I thought could help me. Because I just finished writing my book. I had lived the stories of my grandmother and my mother and myself and my daughter and Promise now. And that letter started with Dear Oprah. And I told Oprah everything. The letter opened up with, last night my daughter was strangled and almost killed for the 2nd time. And I rambled on as a mother would do who's trying to save her daughter and now her granddaughter. And I said 2 words in that letter that ultimately really became the inspiration behind Saving Promise, at least its name. I said, Oprah, if you cannot help me save my daughter, please, Oprah, help me save Promise. And it was those 2 words, Save Promise, that I decided and said in that letter, I want to launch a campaign to save Promise. And that would become the impetus for me launching the organization. Many people said, well, did Oprah ever respond? And in hindsight, and I know I say this and people is like, really, anybody would have loved to be on Oprah. But I'm so glad sometimes when people don't respond, they give you a gift. And the gift that Oprah will one day find out she gave me was that by not responding, she gave me the gift to find my own voice. So I would go on, I would walk away from a 20 plus year corporate career. I was in project management and executive, et cetera, at IBM. And I would leave eventually to found this organization with the vision around prevention, because here I was coming from 5 generations now, and now here's Little Promise. And I made a decision that one of the reasons why, you know, from mother to daughter to mother to daughter to mother to daughter to mother to daughter, domestic violence prevailed in my family was because of one word: silence. My grandmother didn't talk to my mother about it. My mother did not talk to me about it. And I, unfortunately, and I'm not ashamed to say, I did not talk to Promise, my daughter, not until Promise was almost killed. And so it is that story that would launch me into this organization, Saving Promise. Our whole vision is around 3 things: prevention, public education, and engaging the grassroots community around building a movement to prevent intimate partner violence. There are 3 issues that predominantly impact women: heart disease, the number 1, breast cancer, and the 3rd area is domestic violence. The American Heart Association does a tremendous job with heart disease. As you all know, Susan G. Komen for the Cure and the whole breast cancer and pink movement is changing lives and saving lives in the breast cancer movement. But in domestic violence, we still do not have the same type of focus and urgency to domestic violence that I coined as a public health issue. It is not a family issue. It's not just a community issue. It's not an individual issue. It is a public health crisis of mass proportion.
When you launched this organization, what were some of the greatest gifts you received when you first officially left 20 years in corporate and said, I'm going to launch this effort, this organization? What were some of the things that surprised you in terms of the community, the response that you received?
You know, coming from 5 generations, I think I've earned the right to be honest about this. And one of the biggest surprises for me was how in this space, particularly around domestic violence and the domestic violence advocacy community, how often we work in silos, how it's very competitive, and more importantly, how the issue of domestic violence is still an issue that is so silenced and shameful and stigmatized. And the only time we talk about it is when there's a controversy. So there's something going on like we heard in the NFL or in sports or in, you know, with a celebrity like Rihanna and Chris Brown, or if there's a tragedy. And that should not be so. And that is the whole work that I'm working with. For example, one of our partners is Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. It's one of the groundbreaking partnerships that I was able to broker with Harvard in order to launch what is known as one of the first of its kind research and development labs called the Learning Lab, to study the root causes and other data around intimate partner violence and how we can be more innovative and progressive in our approach in dealing with this issue.
Oh, I thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I think that the key word that you said was silence. And having you spearhead this through Saving Promise, definitely there won't be any more silence around this issue. I'm going to move to the next question now, which goes a little bit deeper into your personal journey. Can you share with us when in your life you have experienced someone mentoring or supporting or guiding you, someone who was a thoughtful, mindful, conscious leader that perhaps shifted your way of thinking or being?
You know, I'll never forget this. You know, I founded Saving Promise in 2007. Around 2011, latter part of 2011, 2012, the CDC, Center for Disease Control and Prevention, came out with a groundbreaking report. And ultimately it said that domestic violence, despite the work that we all were doing in this space, which is meaningful, impactful work, it needed a different directive. It needed a different approach. It was still not getting better. And I went to the White House to meet with a woman by the name of Lynn Rosenthal. And I remember being in this meeting with Lynn, and I was expressing to her, can we figure out how we can all come together and figure out how we pool our time, our talent, our resources to try to collectively solve this issue. And Lynn gave me the most brilliant advice. And she said, ultimately, LY, you have a story, you have a business, corporate background, you have a vision. Go out and do you. Don't try to do it the same way everybody else is doing it. Go do you. And that was the most advice, because when I first came in, I didn't never run a nonprofit. In fact, I set up an LLC instead of a, instead of
501c3.
501c3. I had no idea what I was doing. So what do? You try to be like-minded. Well, let me do it their way. Let me go to them. Let me try to figure out how we can partner that. And it was in that moment that I had a still thoughtful perspective around what needed to be done. And I changed everything around Saving Promise. I focused it on prevention. I focused on greater public education. I focused on the need for research. And more importantly, I focused on the need that it needs to be addressed as a public health issue, not just a domestic violence issue. And so that was one of the wisest advices that someone had ever given to me. And I think it has served me well. It's taken some time to get Saving Promise moving in the right direction. But I'm so glad, even 12 years later, now that it's beginning to take the right direction, I'm so glad that we finally got there.
Right. All because you're doing you, right? What great advice.
Do you, if you don't know anything else. Because you know what that means? It means that you are doing what is speaking to your heart and your soul. And I, quite frankly, I honestly believe that this is my life purpose that God and his universe has purposed me to do. And me to do it this way, that is supposed to be done my way. Not to say that any other way isn't the right way, but this is my piece of adding my voice to the conversation. And the only time you can add your voice to the conversation is when you're adding a true, authentic, and real voice. And that's what I bring to the work that I'm trying to do.
As you think of community builders and change agents that you've surrounded yourself with, are there characteristics that are consistent, that show up all the time when you're spending time with these folks?
You know, one of the types of characteristics that show up, and this is an area that, you know, in doing me now, I'm really serious about. There tends to be in the nonprofit sector this perspective of focusing on the non instead of the profit, right? And when I think about profit, I don't mean in terms of just generating revenue. I'm talking about thinking innovatively, thinking outside of the norms of let me apply for a grant, and I don't, you know, from that kitchen soup mentality sometimes. And I struggle with that because I'm from the corporate sector. That's not how I did it at IBM, right? That's not how I did it at Discovery Channel. That's not how I did it at PricewaterhouseCoopers, all those corporations, global corporations that I was part of at one point in my life. And so when I took on that, okay, this is the way it's supposed to be done mentality from the kitchen soup mentality, and I mean that respectfully. I think the work that everyone is doing in the nonprofit sector is respectful work. But I think we are living in a day and time. We got to think more innovatively. I went to a conference a couple months ago, and two different conferences, and it was about the future of philanthropy, both of them. And one of them says something to me that re-energized the energy I already had. She said, nonprofits need to reimagine the impact that you can have on the community that you serve. Meaning, you got to think outside the box. We got to get outside of our comfort zones. And we also got to think about the future of philanthropy and how we can engage the grassroots community, because that's what we serve. Help them be part of the solutions instead of in our boardrooms, in our back rooms, coming up with programs and based on what somebody gave us a grant. Well, you got to qualify for this grant if you do it this way. And then we go and try to impose it on the communities we serve. No, invite the communities you serve into the conversation to begin with. And that was a turning point for me. It was one of those aha moments that said, with Saving Promise, we need to reimagine the impact that we're going to have on this, and particularly around the issue that is so silenced and stigmatized, like domestic violence.
Right.
We want to engage the community in the same way, you know, Nancy Brinkler, the founder of Susan G. Komen for the Cure. The reason why the breast cancer movement and the pink movement is so relevant and so well received and is saving the lives that it is doing is because you don't see the people in the boardrooms out there marching. You see laymen person, women and men and children wearing pink. They understand because you invited them to the conversation and to be part of the solution.
You know, Ella, you were talking about these conferences that you went to, the future of philanthropy. You know, it's interesting. We have our conference coming up. It's the future of leadership. And it's really in the same parallel that you were talking about. It comes down to grassroots. It comes down to being more mindful and intentional and conscious about the actions that we take. It's about operationalizing those values that we talk about, the brand promises that we make, but are we doing it every day on a consistent basis? And does everybody in our organization, are they willing and ready and capable with the tools as well, right? Mm-hmm. to move in that direction, right, of true impact. And I feel like this is such a great time for organizations like yourself and for the work that we do, because people really understand that we have to mobilize, and it can't just be waiting for someone else to make the decision who has the C-level title or even, you know, who sits in government in Congress or Senate. It has to be, what can we do every day? And I just love that point so much, because to be a nonprofit champion, you don't have to stay inside this category of nonprofit, you know, the kitchen soup recipe that you were talking about. It really is about making sure that you're able to truly verbalize and connect with the right audience of people who are willing to move, who are willing to go above and beyond.
Absolutely.
I love that point.
Absolutely. I came back after that conference, the Reimagine conference, and I wrote an email to my board co-chair. And I said, Ann, I went to an event yesterday, and right at the same time, I had been invited to speak at an event with, I think it's hosted through an organization called Women Opening Doors for Women. And they said, LY, we want you to come be a speaker, and it's focused on democratic young women. So I get there's about 200 women in the room. And when you walked in, you were given a name tag. And about halfway through the event in DuPont Circle in Washington, D.C., at a museum, halfway through the event, they started making announcements. And they said, and then you started seeing women walking around the room with signs with numbers on them. And they said, when you came in, you were given a sign with a number on it. And I looked at my name and my name tag, given a name tag with a number on it. And I looked at the name tag and I had the number 8. It said, follow the number, the woman carrying the sign with your number. I ended up in the corner with a group of about 8 to 10 women with the number 8. And then they said, Ubers are pulling up outside and you're all going to now be taken to a local home in the area. The Ubers are paid for, and you're going to be taken to this local home. And we hopped into Ubers. We ended up about, on 12th and L, somewhere there, about 10 minutes away. And we go into this home, and this woman who opened the whole concept, Women Opening Door for Women, opened her door for us to come in. Now, granted, there were about 150, 200 women there, so they all ended up in different homes around the DC region. She said, grab some Chinese and meet me in the living room. So we grabbed Chinese, we went in the living room with Chinese on our, plates of Chinese on our laps. And then they said, okay, LY, me and another speaker was there, share your story. So I was being invited to share my story, to help empower these women around my story around domestic violence and work that I'm doing in this space. And I remember having another one of those aha moments like I had with the Reimagine conference. And I thought, this is grassroots community engagement, because all those homes that were opened the doors to were talking about issues that impact women, right? And I came back and I wrote an email to my co-chair of the board, and I said, this is what I want to do for Saving Promise. We need to take this issue into the home, because I saw how women opened up and talked about what we were talking about, right? Because you're in a safe space. And what more beautiful way than to build connection, community, and have a conversation around issues that impact women. In my case, it happened to be a cause around domestic violence. And so with that came the vision for what we're launching now called Friends of Promise, a campaign where we're asking the grassroots community to host salons of their friends, family, colleagues, 6 to 8, 10 people, whatever it is. It can be at your home, it can be over dinner, it can be in Starbucks for all we care. And come together and talk about this issue. And so we're launching that on Tuesday, which is October 1st, Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And that is going to be one of our first grassroots community engagement campaigns to engage the community to be part of the solution, because sitting in those living rooms or sitting at that Starbucks or sitting at that picnic table or wherever it might be, around barbecue or a glass of wine, whatever it might be, that's where conversation and change happens.
I love that so much. Just the idea of taking people outside of the conference room context and putting them into homes, to a safe place where they feel psychologically held, safe, and to really explore a difficult issue like this, right? Many people aren't, they're gonna stay silent unless they feel safe to share. I love that. I wanna learn more about that initiative and see how we can support that initiative. I'm gonna move on to the next question, which is, when life has been difficult for you and challenging, is there a motto, a philosophy, or a quote that you turn to, that you draw upon, that you can share with our community?
Absolutely. And I wrote about this in my third book called Don't Look at the Monster, where I tell my story of building Saving Promise and the journey. And one of the prayers that I say even to this day, because just because I'm starting to figure things out, it's still challenging at times. And so for me, my mantra is the serenity prayer. God, give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I mean that in every facet of what that means in terms of change. If you think about it, change is the key word. Give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. So my vision for Saving Promise, and my vision to where I know me as a leader, as a change maker, as a social entrepreneur, I know what my vision, and oftentimes people say, oh, why you yes, sound lofty. Well, the issue's very lofty, right? So give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. There are some people I will not change, right? The courage to change the things I can, the courage to have the courage to step up into who I am and what I believe in, especially after coming from 5 generations, and have the courage to say, you know what? No, we need to be thinking differently. We need to get rid of the chicken soup mentality, and we need to fight public health issues with public health responses, right? And we need to engage the community, and we need to stop working in silos and work collectively, and we need to figure out how to break the silence and the wisdom to know the difference. The wisdom to know different. Maybe I might be as ignorant as they come when I think about the vision, right? But one of the things I would be most proud of is that I want to be able to say, a lot of people throw the concept of change maker around nowadays. Everybody's a change maker. I want to be able to wear that badge with honor and say, truly, truly, I brought forth change.
Beautiful. Well, you answered beautifully the next question, which was, what would a better world look like? And you just listed all the things that need to happen in order to create a better world. What I'd like to ask you in closing is, how can our community support you and your mission right now? And what is the best way for us to connect, learn more about you, and learn more about your mission?
Well, I love the concept of the masterminds that you were sharing with me before we started talking. And I really love that. And the way your community can support me is to first lift me up in prayer. And then secondly, help me figure out how can I engage more people around Friends of Promise? And I don't mean Friends of Promise because Promise is my cute little 12-year-old now that has an attitude. I'm ready to, like, I'm anti-violent, but oh, that little 12-year-old is challenging me right now. I'm saying it's serenity prayer for a different reason. But how can your community help support the concept of Friends of Promise? Because think about it. If you're able to support a concept and help me build a concept like that, imagine if I believe in learning from others. Imagine if other people use this as a model to have the impact that they want to have in their communities.
Yes, definitely. Well, I definitely want to talk to you about our Nebula Resource Hub, where there's that mastermind piece to support you, and to also your gifts and your wisdom can also support our community of folks who really want to create more impact in the world, using their unique gifts, their unique set of talents and skills, and their life experiences, all that wisdom. It's not just given to us to do nothing with, right? It's to share, it's to pay it forward, it's to help. So we definitely want to spend some time bringing you on board and showing you what Nebula can do in our community, and at the same time expose our community to your efforts. What is the best way to find out more information about your organization, Saving Promise?
So Saving Promise, in fact, we're launching our brand new site on Tuesday, October 1st. It's going to be savingpromise.org. So the site that's out there right now is about to change, and the whole concept around Friends of Promise and everything is being debuted. And in fact, we're launching it on Good Morning Washington on Tuesday morning. And so visit savingpromise.org. And if you I'm very transparent. Drop me a line, lymarlow@savingpromise.org. I'd love to hear from you. I'm always a sponge for knowledge. So savingpromise.org, or email me at lymarlow, MARLOW, @savingpromise.org.
Oh, I thank you so very much for your time today. And we truly appreciate all your efforts and the initiatives and the programs that you're launching to speak on this topic, a very, very important topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
For those that are watching, thank you so much for following us and being a part of this Nebula Change Agent Initiative. Please remember to nominate yourself or someone in your community who's making a difference. Visit us at nebula.soarcommunitynetwork.com. Thank you, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.